She needs some of this information so she can put it in the community file so she can upload it. So at some point, this person will have to something that when you want to see information so that whoever the person in the community file of the enabling features has time to do it.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. This is Ryan Wertz, NSSFL President, and welcome to this very first ever pre-conference webinar, which is associated with the 55th Annual NSSFL Business Meeting. This is a first for the organization, and this is in response to the membership's request for more time for professional development activities and opportunities for networking and sharing at the annual conference. We wanted to use available technology to free up some time at the conference this year in San Antonio for more of that. So it seemed like a good use of technology to come together this afternoon for a pre-conference webinar to take care of the old business part of our annual business meeting. It's a part of the meeting that's very, very important, but it's also kind of the drier, shall we say, part of our annual business. So we thought, let's get it out of the way on a Friday afternoon or morning, depending on where you're at across the country. I'd like to take a moment to thank all of you for taking time out of your busy days to come together this afternoon or this morning to take care of business, so to speak. Although this may be the drier part of our annual tradition, it's still very much a very necessary part of our annual tradition. So I'd like to begin with just a few points of order for today's webinar. As Anne-Marie mentioned, we are recording the webinar, so this will be available for your future reference in the members only section on the NSSFL website a few days out from today. And this will also allow those who were not able to attend today's meeting to find out what is going on in the organization and to hear from the various officers, committee chairs, and partners of the organization. So with that said, because there's such a high number of participants today and we did want to record, you will be muted during the various presentations, and this is simply to cut down on background noise. As Anne-Marie said, the question box is at your disposal, and Anne-Marie will be monitoring that box for us as we go on, and as questions pop up, if you do have questions, type them in the box and she will alert the appropriate presenter in order to pass those questions on and get those answered for you. And then we will allow, at the end of the webinar, there will be a time where we're going to unmute everyone in order for there to be a period of question and answers for any reactions to anything you've heard today and for any conversation. We do have a very packed and tight agenda today. NSSFL has become a very busy and much sought organization. We are being asked to collaborate at levels that at least I've never seen during the 9 years now that I've been an NSSFL member. This is keeping your board busy, this is keeping your committee chairs busy, and many members who are volunteering their time on behalf of the organization. So to all of you, thank you for joining in, thank you for your interest in the organization. We will be voting on a number of things today. In particular, we'll be voting on the approval of the annual minutes from last year's meeting. We'll also be voting to accept the treasurer's report, and then at the end of the meeting we'll be voting to adjourn. If I do ask for a motion, I will ask Anne-Marie to unmute everyone, and if you would like to make that motion or second a motion, we'd ask that you identify yourself clearly by stating your name for the minutes. As I said, there will be time for questions, reactions, and conversation at the end of today's webinar. So with that said and the ground rules laid out, let's just take a very quick look at the agenda. You'll be hearing first today from the various officers of the NSSFL Executive Board. I'll be introducing the board here to you in just a second. following the various officers' reports and voting on the minutes and the organization's financial report, we'll move on to our various committee chairpersons for short reports, and then something kind of new and wonderful for us. We've asked several of our partners to join us today and to address the membership. These are folks who are usually encumbered with other duties and activities when we're all together, usually on their own organizations. So because we're meeting ahead of the ACTFL meeting, we're actually able to be joined today by representatives of JNCL, the College Board, and ACTFL. So very pleased to have those folks joining us a little bit later in this broadcast. And then at the end, after the question and answers, I'd just like to share a few of the highlights of this year's annual meeting. There are many highlights, but I'll try to pick out the ones that are probably most pertinent to you at this point in time, and then we will adjourn. And we are going to try to hold ourselves to this schedule as best as we are able to. I've got the phone right here. So I'm going to move right on into the President's Report, if you'll permit me, after I introduce our members. So of course you're hearing from me, Ryan Wertz. I'm at the Ohio Department of Education, and I have the very great honor to serve as your president this year and next year, which is something I do not take lightly. I would also like to introduce our Executive Vice President, Robert Crawford from West Virginia. Lynn Fulton Archer from Delaware is our Executive Secretary. Lisa Harris is our Executive Treasurer, Executive Membership Coordinator, Executive Conference Registration Coordinator, and many, many other offices, jack of all trades. Anne Marie Gunter from North Carolina is your President-elect. And we have with us also today Desa Dawson from the state of Oklahoma, and Desa is your immediate past president. I would just like to commend this board for their efforts. This is a particularly focused, hardworking, thoughtful, creative group of individuals, and I am quite blessed actually to have the opportunity to work with them on a daily basis practically, because that's about how often we're in touch with each other. To move forward, though, the image you see, I was trying to think of an image that would capture kind of where we're at organizationally right now. And as you can see, it's a new day dawning, the balloon is rising, and it's smooth sailing. The NCLIS is healthy. We are financially fit. We are actively involved in our career field around the country and around the world, and things are sailing along rather smoothly right now. So I thought this kind of bucolic scene with the balloon floating over the morning scenery was pretty befitting of where we're at right now in the organization. When I took the office of president, as I said, I did not take this office lightly, and I set some very specific goals for myself and for the executive board. And my first goal was, quite frankly, a customer service goal. All of you, the members, are our customers, our clients, our constituents, and it is absolutely essential that I, be responsive to all of you in a timely manner with any concerns, needs, ideas, or requests that you bring before us. Secondly, it is my job and the job of the board to communicate well with the membership and with each other. Only through effective communication can we be a healthy organization and meet our many different goals. My goal is to lead via consensus building. This is a long tradition in this organization among your past presidents. I've had the pleasure and honor of serving with them on the board now for a number of years, and I've been watching very carefully how they do things, and this seems to be the best way to go about our business here in the NCLIS. I also feel it's my responsibility and the responsibility of the board to work to heighten the visibility of NSSFL as a credible source of both regional and national leadership in our field. And I think it's probably obvious to all of you that there are many signs that this is happening in recent years and in recent months, or at least I hope you see that. I see it as my job to liaise effectively with all of our various partners and on all of our various projects and initiatives. It is my job and our job as an organization to advocate strongly for world language specialists in departments of education where there currently are none. Of course, if you're the president, you have the weight on your shoulders of organizing and effectuating a high-quality annual meeting. Ours is taking place this year in San Antonio, and I certainly hope with all the work that has going into putting this conference together that we will meet the diverse needs of our various members. I'm working with your web coordinators to ensure that the NSSFL website is up to date at all times, since it's becoming a destination these days for people outside the organization to learn about what's going on in all of your different states. And then, of course, just a personal goal, trying to maintain a balance between the duties of the NSSFL presidency and the obligations of my job here at the Ohio Department of Education and at home. If you've never been the NSSFL president, I will tell you, in all honesty, this is like having a full-time job on top of having a full-time job. But I'll also say in the same breath that it's a lot of fun supporting all of you, working with all of you, and seeing this organization grow and become very, very well respected these days. In terms of what's been going on, over the past months we have held 11 regularly scheduled monthly board meetings, but as I said, this board is particularly active. We are in touch on an almost daily basis, definitely on a weekly basis. We had spent some significant time earlier in the year analyzing the feedback from the 2013 meeting, and we've carefully considered it and used it to guide our conference planning efforts for this year. I think it's important for you to know that we have renewed ties with Avant Assessment. As you know, we had something of a major riff between that company and our organization over some inappropriate use of our NSSFL intellectual property. However, I think it's in our members' interest to have ties to Avant Assessment to ensure that we are part of the creation and review of their new tools. If you're not aware of it, David Bong is back at the helm of Avant Assessment, and he's been working very, very hard to win back NSSFL's respect and interest in what's going on in that company. So I would say at this point we're on a much better footing with Avant Assessment than we were here just in the past couple of years. As you know, we held a PD webinar earlier in the year to bring you up to date on LinguaFolio, and Ruta Couet in South Carolina, our LinguaFolio chair, will be giving you a further update here in just a little bit. We also created an ad hoc committee to provide the U.S. Department of Education with feedback on the current and, I must say, very obsolete foreign language course codes. And you're going to be hearing a little bit about that if you're in San Antonio with us. We've also are in the process of creating an ad hoc committee to refresh or rebuild the NSSFL website and bring it up to speed with modern developments in website technology and offerings. You'll be hearing more about that at the conference in San Antonio during the new business portion of our meeting. And we've also put out the call for your state reports, and you'll simply see that question there. Have you done yours? Very, very important, if you have not already updated your state report for the year, to get that done and to get it done quickly. As I mentioned, more and more people and organizations are taking a look at those state reports. I'm getting emails on a very regular basis these days from people inquiring about the information on the state reports, wondering how up-to-date they are, how accurate they are. So it's vital that we all put some time into those state reports. I'd also like to just very quickly tell you a little bit about what we've been doing with our various partners. As I said, we're very, very busy these days. We have a new contract with the College Board. In fact, you'll be hearing from Bob Davis of the Chinese Language and Cultures Initiatives a little bit later on. We took part again in the guest teacher program interviews in Beijing back in the spring. We were a somewhat smaller contingent from the CESFL this year. But mighty, as we interviewed literally hundreds and hundreds of Chinese guest teachers. Your president had the pleasure of serving on the Program Advisory Committee for the National Chinese Language Conference, and with that came the responsibility of reviewing many, many session proposals. Very special this year, we had a special meeting of the CESFL at the National Chinese Language Conference in Los Angeles. There were 24 CESFL members that came together representing 19 states. Someone said the other day, are you excited about doing your first CESFL meeting? And I said, well, actually, I kind of already helped do one earlier this year, so that was good practice for this bigger meeting coming up in San Antonio. Of course, most of you are aware of the Chinese State of the Field data project that we are collaborating on with College Board and with Han Ban. Many conversations around that project from the initial creation phase to the implementation, and now we're in the part of the project where you will be starting to hear some information in terms of the results of those surveys. And Shuhan Wang, our dear retired member from Delaware, well, she won't say that she's retired, but she and Don Reutershan have been actively analyzing all the wonderful information that you all shared, and we'll be getting kind of a first peek or first words about the results in San Antonio. I also had the honor of representing you and serving as the curriculum consultant and the lead trainer for the StarTalk Guest Teacher Summer Institute that was held in Los Angeles. And prior to doing that, I did a series of webinars in conjunction with the College Board for the new guest teacher program host institutions. In terms of our work with ACTFL, part of my duties are to help with the review of ACTFL session proposals. In fact, I just got a message earlier today telling me that there are going to be many, many proposals waiting on me to review here right when I get back from San Antonio. I was also very pleased to be included in the planning of the 2014 Assembly of Delegates. You'll be hearing more about that from Marty and Paul Sandrock when they present later this afternoon. One little bit of a change that we lobbied for was to move our participation from the morning to the afternoon. Having that big interruption in the morning on Thursday really interrupted the flow of our own meeting. So this way we'll get most of our business done before we attend the Assembly of Delegates, and then we'll be together again just for a short hour or so after the Assembly of Delegates to wrap up our conversations in our own meeting on Thursday. And I think this will flow or allow the meeting to flow a little bit better than in the past. Also have worked with my executive colleagues on the CESFL Executive Board. We were given a first look at the new ACTFL World Readiness Standards for Learning Languages, and we were asked to review, provide critical feedback for those in preparation for giving an official CESFL endorsement of the document. And your board members are in agreement unanimously that the new World Readiness Standards are worthy of an CESFL endorsement. And we congratulate our ACTFL partners on the hard work that went into the refreshing of those standards. You'll be very pleased when you have the opportunity to see those. And if I'm not mistaken, we'll probably get a first glance at the ACTFL Assembly of Delegates. With regard to our partnership with JNCL-NCLIS, we are continuing to be represented by our very able delegate, Helga Fasciano from North Carolina. She will be joining us here in a bit to give her update. Of course, this year, among the various requests for information that we received, we did have that one very high priority request for information from the White House education advisors. Hopefully we might hear a little bit more about where that request had landed in the months since we were asked to share information about high-quality programs in our states. And then the board also reviewed resources of the SCOLA, and that came through a JNCL connection. In fact, we were quite impressed with the SCOLA resources. SCOLA is working hard to make those available either for very low cost or hopefully for free to K-12 educators. They are most impressive and most comprehensive. So we actually have a SCOLA representative coming to the national meeting in San Antonio to talk to you. And then, of course, we have some ventures with multiple partners. We continue to collaborate with our good friends at the Center for Applied Second Language Studies, Castles, out at the University of Oregon around LinguaFolio Online. We are currently one of the major partners on a national task force that has been working hard to come up with a set of kind of generic guidelines to share with states that are interested perhaps in creating their own seals of biliteracy. We are also collaborating with many different organizations on the Leadership Initiative for Language Learning. You'll be hearing about that initiative at the actual Assembly of Delegates. And of course, we've been very busy collaborating with our partners at NADSFL and ACTFL around this upcoming meeting in San Antonio. So to say the least, we've been busy this year, and I think we're making good progress on all grounds. At this point, I'd like to turn the meeting over to Desa Dawson, who is going to be reporting in the place of our Executive Secretary, Lynn Fulton Archer, who is not able to be with us today. Unfortunately, Lynn had a work conflict that she could not get out of. So at this point, Desa, if you would like to give the report of the Necessful Secretary for us, I would be most grateful.
Okay, Ryan, I hope you have the slides and the minutes to put up as well.
The slide is up with the various talking points, and then the minutes were sent out numerous times over the past couple of weeks. So members should have those for their reference. I also sent those out earlier this morning just so that people would have them one last time for reference. So.
Okay, great. Now they're showing on my screen. I appreciate that. Well, good afternoon from Oklahoma. What you need to know is that our former secretary, Lisa Harris, took our minutes in 2013, and thank you very much, Lisa. We appreciate that. Then our current secretary, Lynn Fulton Archer, reformatted those minutes. In February, you got 3 calls, March, April, and October, for any corrections. And then a revised copy was sent back after for more feedback after Lynn was able to revise all of the things that she got back. And a final version now exists. So we are ready to vote approval, hopefully, on those minutes.
All right, and at this point, if there are any corrections that still need to be made, if any of you took a quick look at those in recent days and happened to catch something that we didn't catch in all of those other opportunities that you were given to fix anything that was not accurate or missing or incorrect, this would be time to let us know. So we can use a chat box for that, or you can also use the raise hand feature if you at any time right now would like to point something out to us that needs to be corrected. I'm trying to look down to see if anyone has their hand up. An interesting point to share, I'm not sure if you're all able to see this in the chat box. Very interesting, though. This is coming to us from Tom Welch, and that is that Tom heard that Avant either went or is going out of business, and that's why they canceled their recent webinar. He does think that David Bong is going to San Antonio, though. The Avant website is still live, so maybe just a disgruntled employee with a bad email. Hard to tell. Tom is going to check this out for us and will report back to us. Actually, now I see Tom just talked to David Bong. They will be in San Antonio. They will continue to sponsor us, etc. So that must have just been a rumor. Interesting there, though. Still not seeing any hands raised at this point. At this point, we have a move from Phyllis Farr in Kansas, Phyllis Fair, sorry, that we approved the minutes as submitted this morning as they were attached to my email. Would anyone like to second that motion? You can do so in the chat box. So for the record, Phyllis Farr has moved that we approve the minutes as submitted this morning in the email that I sent out. And Sherry Quinlan, retired successful member from New Jersey, seconds the motion. At this point, then, we'll go ahead to take a vote on the minutes as they appeared in the email this morning, that final version that was shared with all of you. And the poll is now open. On your screens, you should be seeing the poll question just come up. And Anne-Marie, what should we be seeing on our screen at this point?
You should see the quick poll on your screen, and you should be able to click on your response there and then hit submit. The quick poll looks like any kind of sort of multiple choice question that comes up in webinars or audience response systems. And if you just click on your answer, yes, no, or abstain, and hit submit, it will automatically start feeding into the poll tally.
I am not seeing anything on my screen. Is there anything that we need to do to make that poll appear?
Do make sure that you have refreshed your screen and that you're looking at our broadcast screen. You may need to refresh your screen possibly.
Oh, I see. It says that those of us who are panelists on the webinar that were not given the opportunity to vote. So if you are listed as a staff or panelist and you wish to cast your vote, if you would do so in the chat box.
Thank you. I'm seeing those come through. Just a quick reminder, we do have non-voting members. Some of them are voting anyways or voting to abstain. That's fine. All of that information will be collected through our poll feature here within GoToWebinar. And Ryan, it appears that we are almost done voting. And
Okay.
so here in just a moment I will close that. When I do, I will have the option to put the results on screen so that everyone will be able to see them.
Yes, if you would do that, that would be great.
Those are coming up. They should be visible on your screen momentarily.
I'm not seeing those on this computer that I'm using, but I understand from my colleague Kathy Shelton that they're showing on the computer that she's using. So maybe again as panelists we can't see those. So Anne Marie, maybe you might want to verbally share those results with us.
Great. We have 88% of respondents voting yes to accept the minutes as presented and 12% abstaining today on this particular vote.
All right. And then we'll need to add in any of the chat votes to that total as well if we need to.
Yes, we can do that.
All right, then based on those results, the minutes are approved officially by the membership of the NCLIS. So we'll let that show in our official records and our official minutes from this meeting. Thank you, Anne Marie, for walking us through that process. All right, at this point then I'd like to move on and thank Desa for giving that report and getting us to that point in our meeting. On behalf of Lynn, Fulton, Archer, we will move on now to receive the report from the NCLIS Treasurer, and that is Lisa Harris from the state of Virginia.
Okay, thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. Hopefully up on the screen what you see now is the Treasurer's Report. This report format was the same one that we've used in the past years, developed in cooperation with our accounting bookkeeper consultant, Joy Melnick. And as you can see by the overall summary at the top, we are indeed, as Ryan mentioned earlier, in a very good place financially. We do have a few things that we need to review and discuss, and this report will be given in two parts. Today's part, I'll be sharing with you the old business, the items over the past year, and then at the annual conference when we discuss the new business section, we will talk about moving forward financially and decisions that the membership will need to make based on that. As you look at the totals at the top of this report, it's important to keep in mind a few things. Some of you may wonder why you see some very large numbers on there, and then the item at the bottom that shows we are operating at a loss for the past year. There's a few things to take into account when you look at these numbers. The first one being is that most of the very large numbers are actually part of what are called our restricted funds, and it is because they come to us via being the fiscal agent for the grant with the College Board and Chinese Guest Teacher Program and the Star Talk program that Desa did such a wonderful job managing last year. And so you'll see a lot of income and expenses going out that look fairly large, but it's because they are related to that. The actual operating expenses for the NCLIS, you can see, are much more modest. And based on the income received from dues and conference registrations, we operated last year what shows at a loss of just over $2,000. However, there is another caveat to take in mind with that. Because we have moved to the new online system, we did incur a few one-time expenses and a few expenses that showed in the current year that are actually prepaid expenses for the next year and vice versa. Some of it's a little bit of complicated bookkeeping type issues, but if you look at the actual expense, you'll see that a few items such as our website payment will show up both under last year and under the upcoming year, as well as some of our expenses for last year's meeting. You'll see the purchase of certain items for the annual meeting expense last year show up, as well as some items for this year's expense. And again, it's because we are now able to real-time capture some of these expenses that are taking place through our online system. So we are actually much closer to having operated at about a $500 loss for the previous year, most of which was taken on as new fees that we've incurred, as well as some one-time expenses that you'll see listed on here, including expenses related to bringing in an extra person for the annual meeting and incorporating a few expenses into the development of the new website coming out. So overall, we are in really great shape. Our bookkeeper is very happy with the state of our books. And we'll talk a little bit later in the meeting about the process of registering and paying for annual dues and registration fees for the annual meeting. As your treasurer, I am happy to report that all of our forms with the IRS have been submitted and accepted and are up to date. Our incorporation is current, and our tax returns have all been filed, and we are in good shape for our nonprofit status. So I want to pause there for just a moment to see if there's any questions about the financial portion before I review the membership report. Okay, I don't see any hands going up, and I guess Anne-Marie, you'll let me know if something shows up in the chat box with a question coming through. Otherwise, I'll go ahead and sort of just give a quick review on the membership report. What you will see is where we were as of October 31st, 2014. A collection of all of last year's paper records were uploaded onto the new Wild Apricot membership system, and we are now able to capture real-time our current membership. So on October 31st, the number of memberships that were actually paid to date are the ones that you see listed. That number has now increased because a number of those that were listed on the membership for last year who had not yet paid have since paid. You may also notice, if you looked at last year's membership numbers, that the numbers look a little higher, and that is a couple of reasons. One of which is we are now able to make sure we capture everybody at the current year at the moment, whether they have paid or not. Another is that we did have a number of members to retire and move into that retired category, and we were fortunate enough that those members do have replacements at their current division. So some of our regular members moved to associate or retired regular status, and we added new regular members to take their place. We also have a few people who moved from one category to another because they moved into school division positions where they're now listed as an associate member and have been replaced with current members in the regular status. So we have a nice membership total. I believe our actual total paid membership as of this morning is 80 members. And so we've increased a little bit since October 31st when this report was printed. Okay. So for the old business, I think that's what I have for you, and it's time for any questions that you may have on the Treasurer's report.
No questions are coming in at this time.
Okay, I'm not seeing any questions. Can I ask for someone to make a motion for approving the Treasurer's report?
All right. Before we move that, if you could show my screen, we've got just a slide here to remind people how to do this process. Anne-Marie, if you could just bring it over here. And while Anne-Marie's doing that, I'd like to just jump in and thank Lisa for the outstanding job that she's doing as treasurer. Of course, you know, most of you, that I served as your treasurer for 5 years, so I always keep my eye on our finances and how those finances are being managed. And Lisa is an outstanding steward of our resources. She's done an excellent job getting the Wild Apricot membership portal up and running. She is very professional in her reporting to the board. We feel very, very well informed about everything that's going on with the organization financially, and we attribute that to her outstanding organizational skills. She is an outstanding treasurer, and I can't sing her praises enough. And with that, if you want to go ahead and call for a motion, just a reminder to everyone that our bylaws allow only regular SEA members and retired SEA members to vote. So if you are a regular or retired SEA member, at this time, Lisa will call for a motion on the Treasurer's Report.
And I see that Gregory Fulkerson has moved to approve the Treasurer's Report. Is there a second? And we have a second from Ruta Couet. And so, Anne-Marie, if you will take care of the polling.
Great. My screen shows that the poll is open. If you would go ahead, regular and retired SEA members, and cast your vote. And then if you are listed as a panelist or staff and you're not able to use the polling feature, if you would cast your vote in the question or chat box. And we'll leave that poll open for just another few seconds here. All right, I see that Anne-Marie has taken the poll down. Anne-Marie, will you share those results with us as they're available?
Yes, the results should be coming up on most people's screens, but it's 83% to accept the Treasurer's Report as presented and 17% abstaining. There were no votes either on the quick poll or through the chat box.
Okay.
All right, then in that case the motion carries and the Treasurer's Report is officially accepted by the membership, and the minutes from this meeting will reflect that fact. So thank you again, Anne-Marie, for facilitating that vote, and for those of you who took the bother to vote for us. All right, at this point then, I would like to pass the torch back to Anne-Marie, who is going to give the report of the President-elect, and she's also going to lead the call for our NSSFL-led sessions at next year's ACTFL conference. So Anne-Marie, take it away.
Just one moment. All right. Thank you, Ryan. We have 4 Lead with NSSFL sessions at the upcoming 2014 ACTFL convention. They will all be on Saturday, November 22nd at the times you see now listed on the screen. We have 2 sessions during the 8 to 9 a.m. Time, and then 1 from 2 to 3 and 1 from 4 to 5. Here is some more information about those morning sessions from 8 to 9 a.m., including the rooms they're located in, as well as their presenters. So you can see that Ryan, Gerhardt, and Helga will all be presenting on Saturday morning. The afternoon sessions are also listed now on your screen, and they will be in a similar location at the conference, and we will have presenters Terry, Helga, Greg, Ursula, and Michelle sharing different information from around the country with everyone at the ACTFL convention. Just a quick note, we had some late entries for our successful-led presentations, but we got everyone's information on here. We are aware that several of you also have other sessions that have been accepted at ACTFL, and we encourage you to share those with our membership and that kind of thing. Also, as part of the ACTFL convention, we want to remind everyone that there is a free mobile app that you can download in the following ways here. Using the QR code on the ACTFL website, going to tripbuilder.com and following the instructions to access that app, or simply downloading it from the App Store if you have a smart device. You are able to note and create a schedule for yourself under My Show, where you can click on all of the successful-led presentations if you'd like to go to those, as well as presentations by other members with colleagues across the country. So that information is available. This is the second year we've had the ACTFL app like this, and it can be a very handy tool to use at the convention. Also, please note that in your My Show or My Schedule, you can indicate exhibitors and other kinds of things that you're doing at the convention, including networking meetings and things like that that you want to put on your calendar. Next year at the 2015 ACTFL convention, lead with successful session proposals are very welcome. You see that we will be in San Diego from November 20th to 22nd for the ACTFL convention, and our proposals are due on Wednesday, January 14th, which is exactly 2 months from today. So you have 61 days to start planning your proposal and presentation for next year's ACTFL. When you submit your proposal for a successful-led session, please use the phrase successful-led session either in the content and purpose section of the proposal or the description section. Our theme for next year is Inspire, Engage, and Transform. Some of you may already have read the email that we received today from the ACTFL leadership with more details about the ACTFL 2015 proposals. But I included this information here so that you'll know that the 4 main topics that will be given special consideration are listed here: planning for the learner, learning and teaching, assessment, and collaboration. There are extensive details about that on the ACTFL website. If you go to actfl.org to the Convention and Expo drop-down menu, you'll see that they have information about the 2015 Annual Convention and World Languages Expo that has those details. That is the report from the President-elect. I will hand the controls back to you, Ryan.
All right, thank you, Anne-Marie, for that report. And I would just like to reiterate Anne-Marie's thanks to all of those successful members who are going to the bother of presenting a session this year at ACTFL. We know that your time is valuable, and we greatly appreciate the fact that you're sharing your talents, your information, your resources, and your expertise with the field. And we're very honored to lend our name to your presentations. So thank you all who will be presenting this year, and I would just encourage everyone to consider putting in a proposal for next year's ACTFL conference out in San Diego. At this point, I'd like to pass the torch to Robert Crawford, who is your Vice President from the great state of West Virginia. Robert? And actually, I have Robert's slides on my screen, Anne-Marie, so if you could pass the torch back to me again. I'll just flip through these for Robert as he goes along. So Robert, I think your first slide is up.
Okay, great. So today what I'd like to do is just share with you some updates regarding sponsorship for this year, and also to highlight a couple of the specifics related to some of our nighttime functions. So on the slide that you see in front of you right now, you'll see the new sponsorship level program that we've implemented this year. We're doing this obviously in conjunction with NATSFL. As you look at the levels there, you'll notice that it's actually modeled after the ACTFL proficiency levels. This kind of takes on the overspin of where we used to have gold level or a platinum level of sponsorship that you might see in other organizations, but we've actually modeled this after the ACTFL proficiency levels. The different levels there you'll see provide different perks in terms of the sponsorships. Some of the things that you'll note there specifically that are new is that there's actually the opportunity for ads in the successful program. And also this dictates who has the opportunity to speak to both groups in relation to their specific organization. The listing of these sponsorships in terms of the levels will be available for you in the Successful program. So I encourage you to take a look at that when you receive that on site in San Antonio. Another element related to the new sponsorship levels is that we will be posting online a recognition page for our sponsors. So moving on to the next slide, I'd like to shift and talk just a little bit about a couple of the functions that we're doing at the night. The first is obviously the Tuesday dinner, and again, this is not going to be a sponsored event similar to what we've had in the past. Well, with that said, you should have received an email from Ryan this morning and indicated that most of our meals actually are covered, starting with Wednesday morning breakfast, taking us all the way through Friday breakfast, as well as we have the gracious sponsorship for our break on Tuesday as well. What we've done is we've actually been able to secure the restaurant a cenar, and you'll see kind of in the tradition of the locale in which we are, we've got the Tex-Mex theme going there. We have a 6:45 reservation, and we are scheduled at this point to have patio dining. We will have the opportunity for ordering off the menu, but finding an area that would be able to accommodate our large group was a little bit of a challenge. So to do that, we had to fall into the range of providing a minimum. And as you see there is the email also that Ryan sent, that we are looking at about a $35 to $40 minimum per person. We will have some advertisers that are already set up for us, but again, this will be something that we will need to reimburse Successful for. And again, the instructions are given there of how to do that via a check that you can present to Lisa in person in San Antonio or send to her via mail. And again, the address to send that to her will be available in the Successful program. One point to note as well, I did send over the information today in terms of our individuals who had registered to do the Tuesday dinner. We had a count of 35. If for some reason your plans have changed and you already know that at this point, if you could share that with me, that would help us to adjust our numbers so that we can do so for our overall total for that night. Moving on to take a look at Wednesday, we actually have two events that are going to occur at Wednesday. The first one is sponsored by Mandarin Matrix, and that actually begins at 5:30, and that will begin right after our annual meeting. So it's actually located in the same meeting location in the hotel on the 4th floor there. We'll actually move up a level. But again, this is just more of a reception. There won't be any food at this particular event, but it really is an opportunity just to move straight from our meeting there and go directly to this reception. This is similar to what we had last year, if you remember. And the next event that we have, if you move on, we actually have a new event this year sponsored by EMC, and that is more of a dinner reception that will follow the reception at the hotel. And again, that's just a short walk there. This is also at the Riverwalk, so we have two Riverwalk events that are for us this particular year. You were asked to register for this in advance, but with that said, through your registration through Successful, we also forwarded on that information. So if you had indicated through your Successful registration that you wanted to participate in the Wednesday dinner event, then we had sent your information on as well. So two functions on Wednesday, and again, we encourage you to participate in both if you signed up for those. Moving on to Thursday, we have our annual President's Reception, and this is at the Buckhorn Saloon and Museum. And if those of you that were around for the previous San Antonio, you will note that this is actually the same place. So again, that's another great opportunity. Always the President's Reception is. Again, that's sponsored by Stevenson's Learning Systems Incorporated. And again, as well, that Ralph from that organization also very kindly did our programs as well. So we do want to recognize our sponsors for their contributions. And that brings us to our last page here. A big thank you to all of our sponsors. Here you see a list of everyone who is sponsoring us this year. Again, we thank them for their efforts to help make our annual meeting possible in terms of providing for the meals, the internet, the snacks, the things that we need to keep us nourished as we move through our hopefully exciting agenda that we have planned this year. do encourage you at some point to stop by the booths of the sponsors and the exhibitors hall and give a good thank you to them. You'll find their booth numbers located in the Successful program, as well as you'll be able to see the ads for those that have those as well. And again, we encourage you to consult your program for all the sponsorship information, as well as the times and locations for the different meals, breaks, and so forth. And that should conclude the Vice President's report.
All right, and I'd like to just give a hearty thank you to Robert on behalf of all of us. The work that you and Leslie from NATSVille have done this year in terms of eliciting sponsorship and at the levels you've gotten a sponsorship is truly outstanding, especially given that this is your very first year in this office doing this job. So thank you so much for all the time and effort that you put into making our time in San Antonio so enjoyable. Clearly we're going to eat well and drink well and have some great social time, in addition to all of the hard work that we're going to be doing at our upcoming meeting. So thank you.
Thank you.
All right. At this point, you have now heard from all of the executive officers in one way or another, and I'd like to move on to the chairs of our various committees. And we're going to start off with a report from our LinguaFolio committee chair, and that is Ruta Couet, former NATSVille president from South Carolina. Welcome, Ruta.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Can you hear me? Yes. Okay, great. So Ryan, you have the slides. Would you just you can follow along? It'll be faster. All right. So I'm going to start out by saying good afternoon to everyone from sunny South Carolina. It's very sunny, but a little chilly. For us, chilly is anything lower than 75 probably. It's in the 50s today, so everyone's bundled up. Probably the most significant event for the LinguaFolio has been this collaboration with ACTFL. We started out doing our own thing, and then last year a number of us worked closely with OPI trainers and testers to update our can-do statements and to align them to the 2012 proficiency guidelines. So this was, I think, a pivotal moment in the history of both organizations where we began collaborating, and hopefully this will, well, we've seen already some evidence of this, that we are collaborating on other things. So if we look at the next slide, we just see what the different options were on the LinguaFolio site. They're still there. Some of them have been revamped or consolidated. I'm not going to read them to you. These are all things that people want to know. However, we did the very first thing is that fact sheet, and on the next slide you'll see that what we thought was very important as a committee was to have a one-pager where people could explain and share what LinguaFolio is, particularly when teachers and even ourselves, when we're dealing with our different people in our agencies that don't have any kind of a language background. This encapsulates in a very short form, succinct form, what LinguaFolio is, how you use it, and what the resources are. And as time goes on, we may find the need to update this, but nonetheless, this is current at this time. What we also did was create a kind of a how-to. We had the modules before, but we really wanted to have a document that was short and sweet and had a step-by-step process so that people who are not in classrooms, the learners out there that are doing this on their own can have some guidance as to how to do this. And this is just a quick example of what this looks like. It's short and sweet and to the point. Finally, we also did a little bit a summary for the learning facilitators. How can they use this this document? What are the, and especially now in the light, when we started doing this, this was a little bit before everyone was really focused on teacher evaluations, but it turns out that this is actually going to be very helpful as we most of us are working on this in our states. So here are some ideas that we give the learning facilitators as to how they might use LinguaFolio. Then we did some major revisions. We looked at the original terminology that we used, and you'll see on the next slide what those changes were. And we went from checklists to statements. You know, part of our experience was that learning facilitators and learners alike were looking at, well, I've done it once, I can check it off. And we didn't want to send a message that that's what those statements were all about. So for lack of a better term, we were now talking about statements because we were hoping to send a message that it's not a one-time event. We talked, we had this terminology of main can do, sub can do. At some point we had a parent can do, a child can do. And we changed them to align them to terms that are more widely used in the profession, such as benchmarks, progress indicators, and sample learning targets. It particularly, I guess there's not much of a difference between examples and sample learning targets, but when you start talking about lesson planning as opposed to unit planning as opposed to course descriptions, sample learning targets takes on a more specific meaning. So these are some of the revisions and updates that we did. We totally gave the pages a new look, as you can see in the next slide. We made them a little not as big. We did some shading to highlight the necessful teal, and as you can see on the slide, we used the new terminology, and we added a column for evidence so that learners understand if they have checked off that I can do this, that it is not, they can't do that without submitting some evidence. In the dossier, we added the proficiency. There we are. On the dossier, we added actually some other examples so that people would think about what are those external assessments that are good. Some of us saw that people were trying to use assessments such as the National French Test or the Spanish Test that really are not aligned to proficiency at all. So we thought it might be a good idea to add some suggestions, especially now that some of the countries are maybe offering some of these tests for free, so that we thought if we can make the connection not just between the ACTFL proficiency guidelines but also the CEFR, that might be a good thing. Then we went to the passport. We also made that a little streamlined, which is on the next slide, the streamline what it would look like, so that if you're not using, whether you're using an electronic version or a paper version, you could, it's a nice summary sheet. And then finally, we added and hope to keep adding as new research comes up, the major research projects that exist. Actually, as you see, most of these come from Nebraska. Ali Moeller's, some of her graduate students are in the process of doing other different research projects. So we would like to keep this updated as new doctoral students, or anybody for that matter, does any kind of action research, that we could have a running list of what's going on. Finally, I would like to share this with you. When you go to the site, if I've done this myself, I want to check something and I forget and I have to re-register. I happen to get these on a regular basis in my email box, as well as the one that we have set up specifically for LinguaFolio, and it's been very revealing to me that on an average we get anywhere between 60 and 70 requests a month. So if you multiply that by 12 months in a year, it's clear that we are getting a lot of interest in LinguaFolio. We still have one section of LinguaFolio to update, and that is the language inventory, and the how do I learn. We feel that some of, as things change, some of the some of the statements that we have in there don't really reflect the technology that we have today. So we are going to do that very, very soon. And I would like to just give a shout out to my fellow committee members who have helped in this process. And we will continue to keep this the best tool ever for our learners. Thank you very much.
And Ruta, thank you for your continued stewardship of LinguaFolio. You're doing a great job. It's wonderful to know that you're there when we need you for your expertise, and you've been with LinguaFolio pretty much from the start, and it's going strong.
And real quickly, Ruta, we do have one question that came in from the question box, and that is anyone working on a Latin-specific can-do list? We also have some congratulations coming in on the question box for all the great work, so congratulations to the LinguaFolio Committee.
Well, I will say that so many of you may know that Kentucky and South Carolina worked on their latest iteration of their state standards document together. And this was when Jackie was still at the Department of Education, and we have can-do statements for Latin in both of our, well, they're the same. Actually, they're not exactly the same. They're close. For the modern languages, they are identical. But I was on a shorter time frame than Jackie was. So while we worked together, we had to get our Latin can-dos out. So I would suggest that anybody who would like to look at can-do statements, they're welcome to go to either the South Carolina Department of Ed or the Kentucky, and you will find two sets of can-do statements that go across all of the proficiency levels and sublevels for Latin.
And Ruta, just a quick follow-up comment on that. In North Carolina, we have actually started working a little bit on the LinguaFolio grid in relation to programs like classical languages in Latin or visual languages in American Sign Language. We actually adapted the LinguaFolio grid to reflect our proficiency outcome expectations, which are through advanced mid, as opposed to all the way through distinguished. And so certainly we'd be interested in helping out with any work or sharing of work that you've done with can-do statements that are specific to those different kinds of programs.
And I would say that I would welcome, I think we need to, I think the next phase would be really to look at American Sign Language. I was reluctant to begin the process because I was hoping that the National Association of American Sign Language would have done some, there was some discussion about whether they were going to adopt the ACTFL proficiency guidelines, and I don't believe they've done so, but we can't wait forever. But I would, and any state that would like to work on that, I think that there's no point in each one of us cranking this out. We could do it collectively and collaboratively.
And Ryan did ask that very question about American Sign Language in regards to LinguaFolio. Also, Jackie would like to point out that the Kentucky and South Carolina Latin can-dos also address culture.
Correct. That is it. We don't call them interculturality. We call them cultural connections because there is no interaction really, but nonetheless we do have that indeed.
All right, great questions everyone. Thank you. All right, moving forward is the report of the State Supervisor of the Year Chair. Unfortunately, Vickie had a work conflict today. She sends her regards to everyone and says that she is very eager to see everyone in San Antonio and that she regrets that she's not able to be here today. So I'll just very quickly share a few points that Vickie passed my way. She reported that the process this year for selecting our newest State Supervisor of the Year went very, very smoothly. She gives her thanks to Ruta, Couet, and Sherry Quinlan, who helped form her committee, all of them, of course, being former State Supervisors of the Year. This year, she pointed out that 4 nominations were received. That's a little higher number than we generally get in any given year, and she thought that actually helped the process. Unfortunately, though, all of the choices were terrific, and the committee found it very difficult to make a selection, but they slogged their way through that process. progress, and Vickie looks forward to naming the very deserving new State Supervisor of the Year next week in San Antonio during that Wednesday luncheon that's being sponsored by Pearson. And as I said, she said that having several nominations was actually a helpful thing, and she just wanted to remind everyone, and I would reiterate this as well, that you should never be afraid to self-promote with your state organizations. As we all know, this is a very, very thankless job, and it is contingent on ourselves to perhaps suggest to our state organizations that we've been working hard and doing great things, and that this is one way that we could be recognized for our efforts. That's always a bit awkward, but with that said, that's the way our process works. So please don't be afraid to self-promote. At this point then, just to keep us moving quickly forward, we have the web with two B's, I see. Don Reutershan was our technology and web coordinator up until just recently, and he has officially now passed the torch on to my colleague here at the Ohio Department of Education, Kathy Shelton. And Don sends his regards. Unfortunately, he was not able to attend today. He had all kinds of things going on at home with a big home repair job that just got in the way of his ability to be here. But Kathy is prepared to give her report at this point, and I believe I have the slides, so I'm going to go to the first slide and pass it on to Kathy Shelton, your new web coordinator. And let's see here, we need to unmute my name in the attendees list. And Kathy is actually sitting at my computer and needs to be unmuted. All right. Kathy, you should be able to go.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Are you able to hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good. I will go quickly. Basically, as Ryan mentioned, Don transitioned the technology coordinator position over to me. We had a webinar between Ryan, Don, myself, and Mark, the webmaster, and Mark Beck has been very, very helpful with helping me transition and learn how to do the listserv and the various edits to the website. So if you do have any questions about the listserv, I'm also the moderator on that, so I can help you with any issues on that. Don was hired by the NCLIS board to make revisions to the LinguaFolio pages and documents, which Ruta did a great job reviewing, so I don't really need to go over those. I don't think so. The third point, future updates to the web pages are planned. That's just a little teaser for something that will be talked about at the seminar in Texas. The fourth point, Mark Beck at the Boulevard Group was willing to let me take on some of the editing of the website that Don had had Mark do all the time and that Mark was charging us for, and he did give us a reduction in web fees since I'll take over some of that editing. The next point, the Wild Apricot membership, we're trying to work on finding a way to incorporate when someone puts new information into Wild Apricot, having that automatically update on the members list of the NCLIS site. So that's a future goal. And actually the online state reports, as Ryan has already touched on. And then if you do need me for anything, my email is on the bottom of the slide. And Ryan, I think that was it.
Yep, just want to jump in and say that many of you have not yet updated your state reports, so we need you to get on that soon. We do updates once a year, usually during the month of October. The call went out around the 1st of October with instructions on how to update your state reports. The process, for those of you that have been doing it anyway, seems to be going fairly smoothly. We did give you a deadline of October 31st to get your state report done, but as I said, there are probably still more states that have not updated at this point than states that have updated. So It is a very busy time of the year, especially as we're all trying to get ready for this conference. If you don't get it done prior to your departure for San Antonio, I would just request that you prioritize that on your to-do list when you get home from Texas. And just a shout out of thanks to Kathy. This has been a very, very smooth transition. As you know, Don has been our web coordinator for, I really don't know how long. I've been a member now 9 years, and Don has always been the web coordinator as long as I can remember. So this is new, but Kathy is very tech savvy. She was an amazing technology user and presenter before she ever made it here to the Ohio Department of Education. So we've definitely tapped the right person to pick up the torch and run with it now that Don has decided to relinquish these duties. So thank you, Kathy. We'll move on now to hear the report from our JNCL delegate, and that is our colleague Helga Fasciano in North Carolina. Welcome, Helga, and thank you for reporting out today.
Great. So just checking that you can hear me?
Yes, we can.
Perfect. First of all, I just want to say that it is really a privilege to represent NCLIS as an organization at for JNCL-NCLIS, and going to the 2014 Delegate Assembly really reiterated that. I lost count how many times NCLIS was referenced as a source of information working with you as the representatives at your state departments of education, and how valuable that is in terms of our World Languages Initiative in this country. So kudos to all of you for your hard work in your states. It is noted at the national level, and I did notice this year going to the Hill, I did not have to explain to everyone as much exactly what NCLIS was. For many of them it was, oh yes, we remember what that is about. So thank you again for your hard work. I had already shared with you the Delegate Assembly, so I will not go over that specifically. I just wanted to highlight a few of the things that did occur, and I know that Ryan had referenced a few of these during his report. But it is really important that when we get these requests, and apologies up front, we will often get these requests kind of last minute because they occur as the JNCL folks themselves, so Dr. Bill Rivers, for instance, his staff, and then anybody that he has the opportunity to work with, whether it's with NCLIS, NATSL, etc., so the JNCL-NCLIS members, when they have an opportunity to speak to someone, either at the Department of Education through the White House education efforts, then oftentimes these requests are a result of those contacts. And with that, then there's always a purpose behind them, which oftentimes has a very short deadline. So I did want to thank everyone for sending their information about those effective world language programs. I know there was some debate as to, why they had to be where they are, but I will note that, for instance, in North Carolina, we've had presidential visits to occur here to visit STEM schools because they have that list. Well, now they finally have one for world languages as well, including dual language immersion programs, which is continuing to really generate interest on the Hill. The other one was that intersection of world languages and technology that I know that our friends at ACTFL worked on very diligently. But based on that, then of course with ACTFL, they're reaching out to you folks as well because they know some of the amazing things that you're doing. So kudos to all of you that helped to provide that information. The SCOLA was really a breakthrough at that Delegates Assembly because SCOLA was one of the sponsors, and the question was raised, your materials are fantastic, but how do they intersect with the K-12 arena? So because of being there as your delegate, we were able to open that door. I've had several conversations. Ryan has had some conversations. Again, thank you to those that heeded the call to review some of the materials. They are actively creating materials based on those recommendations that will hit and intersect at the K-12, and very interested in reaching out and making sure that those materials are available in a variety of languages. One of the other big pieces that JNCL-NCLIS does is to provide what are called legislative staff briefings. And if you don't know it already, it is the staffers that really run the Hill, because they're the ones that get sent to all of these briefings. They bring all this information back, and they're the ones that inform their bosses as to, you know, what's hot, what's not, what we should pursue, what we should support. And so some of the items that were brought to the Hill as a result of these staff briefings were, these will occur somewhere in either the House side or the Senate side of the legislative buildings, and staffers will be invited to come. These are usually about a 45 to 50-minute briefing and then time for Q&A. And so what has occurred this year is a briefing that dealt with the CLFI literacy, looking at dual language immersion research and the intersection of world language education with global education. So those are the highlights, and urge you to go visit the JNCL-NCLIS. If you just throw JNCL into your Google site, your search engine, it will come up for you, and that does stand by the way, for Joint National Committee for Languages and the National Council for Languages and International Studies. It is an organization that represents the K-20 sector, and I believe, with what I've seen over the past 2 years now as your delegate representative, that there has been a concerted effort on JNCL's part to really hear the K-12 sector and trying to bring some of those pieces to bear. Please know that if you ever have a question, I am happy to mediate for you. They will also welcome questions from you directly. I had run across something that indicated that there might be some legislation coming about or some initiatives around something called dual language. Sent something to Bill, they investigated it, and it was very quick that it's on one side of the House but not the other at this point, but we'll monitor it. So they also appreciate us apprising them of places to go and things to do. When you go to their site, they have revamped it. I'm thinking maybe Dr. Rivers might talk a little bit about that. Ways to find information quickly that might help you in your advocacy efforts. And then also a shout out to them. They have done an amazing job with their updates, and lots of good information there. So between what ACTFL provides now, I think, with their briefs and what JNCL is collecting, we are getting more usable information than ever for us to use in our daily work, making sure that we're well informed to help out our policymakers. And that concludes the JNCL-NCLIS update.
Quick note, we had some questions come in as well as one response during the presentation. Please direct your attention to the questions box. And Helga, if you'd like to add anything to that, or Ryan, please feel free.
Okay, I need to get there. Hang on.
From Mary Rice, we have the question, has the list for effective world language programs been finalized, and where can we access that? And I would add, can we access that? And that's coming to us from Mary Rice at the California Department of Education.
Mm-hmm. And Bill Rivers has responded, which is in the chat box. And he indicates that we sent the list to the White House, and I think that NSSFL would need to decide how to make this public, as we need to think through how the folks left off the list might react.
Good point. All right, that sounds like a conversation we need to have then.
Okay.
All right, well, Helga, thank you for representing us so aptly, both at the JNCL-NCLIS meetings, but also in Washington, D.C. on the Delegate Assembly days. We so appreciate the work that you're doing on our behalf and the collaboration that exists due largely to your great stewardship between JNCL and NSSFL. All right, we're running just a few minutes behind schedule here, but this is a kind of an important little infomercial, if you will, for our membership. And I'm going to ask Lisa Harris to quickly just give us a very short tutorial here on the membership portal. And we are going to turn it over to Lisa so you can see her screen.
Okay, great. Well, hello everyone again. Hopefully what you see up on your screen right now is something you may not recognize, but it is a small portion of the administrator side of the Wild Apricot website. Are you seeing that show up on your screen yet?
Yes,
Brian,
we are.
Okay, great. So I wanted to show you this piece just to give you a quick look at, on the administrative side, what Wild Apricot does for us. I was able to just capture as a sort of pre-annual meeting, those of you who are in attendance here at today's meeting. You didn't need to go and register yourself. I just went ahead and took it right out of the chat box. And once you log in, you will be able to see yourself listed as an attendee to this session. This is something that you see on the administrator side. One other quick thing that I can see on the administrator side that you don't have access to, but that I can get very quickly, is an update of our membership roster. And you can see right here a real quick summary of where we are with our membership at this moment. You can see that we currently have 75 total members who have paid for this coming year. I could also click on here and find out exactly the standing of each person and where they're at. So it was a nice piece just for you to see. The part that I really wanted you all to have a chance to look at today is actually the part that you see when you log into the site. And so I'm going to log out very quickly and show you when you go to the Necessful 47 Wild Apricot site, this is what you see. Some of you have already done this because you registered online for the meeting, and so you went through this portal to do so. But some of you are still sending in the paper registrations, and that's fine. But this system does make it very, very easy for you to self-manage your own registration information and find out the answers immediately to where you stand. And so as somebody who is not yet logged in, this is the page that you would see when you go to the site. And if you want to join or renew your membership, there is a tab at the top to do that. And when you come, this is the one probably where I had the most difficulties, and so I've made a few quick updates just this morning by adding this note. There was a little confusion in the wording when you read it as to logging in. So the first thing that you need to remember, the main thing you need to remember, is the email address that you use for Necessful. If you signed up with your state account and that you listed that as your preferred email, that is your login name. But if you used a Gmail or another personal account and you said that's your preferred email address, that is your login name. If you are a member of Necessful, you already have an account on here. I uploaded everybody off our membership list onto the Wild Apricot site, so you're already on here. So the main thing to remember is if you can't remember what address you used, do not go down here and select a new membership. That then creates a duplicate, which I have to merge into the new file and figure out how to retain and take out. So that's the main point for logging in, remembering your address. If you've forgotten your password, that's very easy to fix. You just click Forgot Password. It'll send you a new one. It'll give you a link to log in, and you create yourself a new password. If you can't remember the email address that you created, then all you need to do is contact me. I'll go in and find how you're listed on the site. So at this point, everyone should have received at least one notice from this site about renewing your membership or some other function. If you have not, I would encourage you to please contact me so we can find out why you are not getting those notices. Very quickly, I am going to log in so that you can then see the view that you get once you log in. And if you are a current member, once you log in, you will not see the option of joining. What you will see is this little notice that says you are already a member. And it will give you the opportunity to edit your member profile, which you can do simply by clicking on that link. It will take you to what is currently listed. If you see anything that is incorrect or that needs updated, maybe you've want to add a committee chairmanship or a committee membership with Necessful, you can go ahead and do that simply by clicking Edit Profile. It is just as easy to register for our annual events. And you do that through the tab that says Annual Meeting and Events. You can see this webinar showing up right now, the 37 registrants that I already put in. You can click on that to see if your name is showing. If not, you can just send me an email and say, hey, I was there, I don't see my name. You can also see our current annual meeting. You can register, but you can see beneath my name here it says I'm already registered, so it tells you that. And you can click to see the details of any particular event. There is a lot of other functionality, including a member directory, which you can go and quickly see any members' information that we have elected to show publicly, which is basically the work address and work telephone contact information, along with whatever email you listed as your preferred email to be contacted by. That's the only thing we allow to be public. So please rest assured, if you put in your home address on the site, that part is not viewable by the public. That is only viewable by you and me as the administrator, or anybody who has administrator rights to the site, which at the moment is just me and the president-elect. So that's a real quick look at where we're at. I encourage anyone who has questions about this site to please contact me. I'm happy to help you with it and work your way through it. If you have changes you want to make, you can go on and make that. I do encourage you to let us know if you have updated your email address, because right now we have two separate systems, this one and our membership page that Kathy is maintaining. And so if you give me the change, or you go directly to Wild Apricot and change it, if you let us know, I can make sure Kathy knows to update it on that membership page. I am working on a tutorial, and we will post a link to that. So in case you have questions about the site, I'm going to try to create a frequently asked questions tutorial so you can go up and remind you how to do certain things. But hopefully this will keep us much more organized. We can very quickly answer questions about our membership. We can very quickly give you answers about whether or not you have paid, and you can go ahead and click on your own name and find out your status as well. And also, anytime you log in, it would give you a little talk box right here at the bottom. If you have an outstanding balance, it would show that to you when you log in, so you'll get a little reminder screen there. So that's our quick update. We'll talk a bit more about this when we do the new business section at the annual meeting in San Antonio. But other than that, if you have any questions, this would be the time to go ahead and ask them, or feel free to contact me individually.
And thank you to Tom Welch for that comment. He told us that membership portal looks great. Thanks, a big step forward for us. And that's exactly what this board is attempting to do. We are attempting to move this organization forward in terms of our technological capabilities. Like you've heard a little teaser, we're going to be talking about refreshing our website and our web-based capabilities. We're going to be talking about things such as badges at our meeting, and we really want to move forward and not only keep up with the times, but we'd like to kind of be technologically at the forefront. So we have a little catching up to do first before we can get out in front of the pack, but we've got great expertise within the membership in general and on our board in particular, and our committees, and we are going to tap that expertise and continue to utilize technology to its fullest extent. So thank you so much, Lisa, for that little bit, and I'm going to ask Anne-Marie to make me presenter again so that we can move on to our esteemed guests who appear to be with us. And our first guest today is coming to us from JNCL-NCLIS, and that is Dr. Bill Rivers, who serves as the Executive Director of JNCL-NCLIS. Bill, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to join us today. in San Antonio this year as well.
Okay, Ryan, thanks very much. And I was very happy to hear the report from Helga. I can only underline how important the participation in CESFL has been over the last 2 years. That this list that we sent to the White House and this sort of endless data calls that we have and the requests to provide input on our position papers and white papers, it's actually very important. And as Helga noted, people now understand what it is in terms of a state supervisor, and there's much more of a discussion on the Hill on language. And we also use the good work that you're doing to reflect it back to the Hill. There's a lot of really good stuff going on at the state level. I know it's not everywhere isn't great, but it does kind of push back on some of the assumptions about language that are held at the national level on the Hill and in the Department of Education. The example of Scow, one of the other functions we have is trying to network and trying to help people make connections. We're not the only group that does that, but that was a really powerful example. And Ryan, as we go into the slides here, so I'm going to talk about the AAAS. I'll try not to speak in acronym too much, but you'll have to forgive me. I'm sitting in Washington, D.C. as we speak. The American Academy of Arts and Sciences and Language. And this is where we're looking forward now. What do we think is going to happen in 2015 and 2016? Funding and programs, supporters and champions, and then our general strategy that is starting to really, I think, come into clear review. So we can go on to the next slide. American Academy of Arts and Sciences and Language, and why are they interested in language? And it's because people like Marty and I have been engaging with them over the last couple years through some very happy coincidences to raise the issue of language. And I think we're at the point now where AAAS, founded in 1780 by John Adams and a number of other luminaries, it's the oldest U.S. academic society. It's some 5,000 fellows elected by the fellows. So it's quite an honor if you're in academia or in the public sector to be elected to the society. You may recall that last year they published something called The Heart of the Matter, a report by the AAAS Commission on the Humanities and Social Sciences. That was requested by Congress in 2012. Congress has a habit of asking AAAS to answer questions in the broad, under the broad ambit of the arts, the humanities, the sciences, the social sciences, and their impact on society. So AAAS in 2013 published The Heart of the Matter, which looked at the state of the humanities. Just this year they published a report on STEM education in K-12 that was requested by Congress. Right now, and Marty and I have been actually emailing furiously and talking furiously today on this very topic. We're very close to having a formal request from the Congress, from several members in both houses and on both sides of the aisle, a letter to AAAS asking the Academy to answer the question, the broad question of what is the impact of language on the national interest in the year 2015, since this study would be commissioned in 2015. This is, I think, going to be really important because it'll be the first broad-based congressionally requested study since the Perkins Commission in 1979, and we all think of that as the Paul Simon Commission that had Paul Simon and Leon Panetta and other folks on it. The new commission will work for a year to assess the impact of language on education and cognition. So what are the sort of benefits of language per se? Not so much an instrumental approach, but the sort of core language for its own sake benefits. Global security, economic growth, and social justice. A number of organizations, JNCL-NCLIS members, and have been working very hard to make this happen. And so do stay tuned for more. I just got off the phone with the lead at the American Academy of Arts and Sciences, and they are fully committed to this, which through the fellows, their board of directors, the president, their executive director, and they think they can raise the money fairly quickly to commission a study. The commission will be composed of a small number of luminaries, people like Leon Panetta, maybe not Leon Panetta himself, but I'm sure he'll be asked, and Ambassador Carl Eikenberry and Dr. Hunter Rawlings, the president of the American Academy, American Association of Universities, and then a number of folks from the language world, nationally recognized folks whom we would think of luminaries, but let's face it, we're not all that well known outside our own circles. So we really do have we're putting a lot of hopes on this, and it'll give us a year-long process in developing the report, public events that will be publicized, and so on. So we can move on to the next. I don't want to get too far ahead of myself. So programs and funding. This is always sort of the doom and gloom slide. FLAP, there's no action expected in FY15. It is still in our request to Congress. It is still at 0 in the Department of Education budget. I think FLAP matters tremendously in that it sort of does two things. It's a chance for the Department of Education to put a concrete policy signal out there for state education agencies and local education agencies. However, given where the department is right now with race to the top and the Common Core, language clearly doesn't fit. And so as much as the Secretary of Education will say the right thing once a year, and he's going to do that on Monday when he does the kickoff for the International Education Week, there's no funding action behind it. So that's in the K-12 side. In Title VI Fulbright-Hays, which I think impacts K-12 to some degree in that there's outreach and there's some programs in particular with the LRCs, we saw a $4 million increase in the Department of Ed budget request. We have to remember that Title VI was cut by 48% 3 years ago, and it is just very slowly recovering from those cuts. The Senate has proposed an increase of $10 million, of which $5 million would be intended for the Paul Simon Study Abroad program. Whether that actually comes through is really anybody's guess. And that's, as I say, that many of you have heard me say this before. Anybody from Washington who says they know what is going to happen is crazy and lying. So I'm going to be very cautious and put a lot of caveats in. We think Start Talk is looking at level funding. We have strong champions on the inside of the intelligence community for Start Talk, but they are having a hard time protecting language budget. Security readiness, and so we expect that national security money will start flowing again even in FY15. Now, the biggest caveat I have is that we may have a continuing resolution, which is remembering that the federal fiscal year starts on October 1st, and we are already operating under a continuing resolution that basically says keep the funding levels at the same, keep funding at the same level as it was last year and prorate it for the next six or 8 weeks, and that may be just rolled into a full year continuing resolution. We may have an omnibus appropriations bill which rolls everything into one giant bill, or we may have a shutdown, or I don't know, donkeys may fly, or something strange may happen in DC. But and I don't mean to be terribly glib about this, but it's very hard to predict, and even our best contacts and best placed contacts often just shrug their shoulders because the climate has changed. It's still vitally important that we keep sending our message to the Hill on the importance of language and the need for these programs. In particular, I think keeping pressure from the Hill on the Department of Education, because the reality is we do have support in the DoD, in the Department of State, in the Office of the Director of National Intelligence, in the National Security Agency for Language. But they're seen as doing language out of principled self-interest. And if there are broader societal benefits, then so be it. But they're doing it because they need a linguistically and culturally skilled workforce. It's the Department of Education where the real policy leadership lies. And when we talk about FLAP, we now characterize it as not just as seed money for fantastic programs, which you guys know better than I, but it was a 20-year living laboratory that let us figure out how to really do things like dual language immersion. It really had a significant role in revolutionizing K-12 language instruction. And it's having lost that, it's actually a pretty significant blow. We need to keep that message in front of Congress. So next slide. So supporters and champions. We don't have a Paul Simon, a David Obey, a Leon Panetta, Rush Holt's retiring, but we do have a few champions who are willing to introduce things, willing to sign things, and they come from all over the spectrum. This isn't an exclusive list, an extensive list, but And by that I mean this isn't the entire list. But Julia Brownlee from Ventura County, California, who introduced the Biliteracy Education and Training Act, the BEST Act, that would create a national program that would give seed money to state education agencies to create seals of biliteracy, for example. Don Young from Alaska. Alaska is like the biggest small town in America in a couple of different senses, but he really does get language, and it's not just native languages. You know, he's friends with people like Judy Tolbert and Ginny Skullickson, whom some of you know. So that's hopeful. Roger Wicker, whose son was a flagship fellow and is an officer in the Coast Guard. Mark Warner from Virginia. We're going to continue to develop champions and where we see that opportunity, but it's still really very important that we have the kind of input that we get from you guys, and coming to the JNCL-NCLIS meeting and meeting with staffers and members, and then the ongoing calls from us and from ACTFL to respond to policy alerts. That kind of continued relationship is very important. All right, our strategy. We're going to focus on the AAAS study. That I talked about that. There will be PR opportunities and beyond at a fairly high level, not going down into a lot of detail into specific programs or recommendations, but giving broader recommendations at the local, state, and national level as to what needs done. And then congressional interest after the publishing of the report. Typically, a report is published, and then Congress holds hearings on, various committees hold hearings on its content. We're going to focus on programs funded by security agencies as we see an opportunity there to push funding in the next year. So START Talk, Flagship, the National Security Education Program, Defense Language Institute, the contracting done by DLI affects a lot of our JNCL-NCLIS members. And DLI and ACTFL have had a partnership for a very long time. We'll continue to maintain pressure on the Department of Ed, both through Congress and through our work in the White House. We'll continue developing strong relationships in the White House and the business sector that serve to get us the kind of testimony that validates what we're doing and can also bring some pressure, we think, onto the Congress and on the Department of Ed to fund our programs. I think, broadly speaking, continuing to make the case for language as a vital component of responsible 21st century citizenship that really does have tremendous individual impact and societal impact. Foreign language in STEM, foreign language in the educational and cognitive benefits of learning it. I was at a Spanish Honor Society induction in the spring, and I'm talking about how language staves off the onset of the symptoms of Alzheimer's, and realizing, and how people who speak two languages make better financial decisions. Realizing I'm missing my audience of 15 and 16-year-old Spanish students, but the parents were appreciative. I could see that. Language and jobs and so on, and all of those white papers are available at our website, and I'm always happy to take questions. So the website's languagepolicy.org. Should be pretty easy to find, or if you Google JNCL, you'll find it'll be the first hit. And I'm always happy to take questions from our members. So thank you very much.
All right, thank you so much for taking time today to be with us and for that very informative report. And I think if I heard anything out of what you said, it's that we have to continue to be active and we continue to need to collaborate very closely in order to be heard and for change to be effected on the Hill and elsewhere. So thank you.
And I'd just give a shout out to Helga. It was really thanks to Helga and for ACTFL for supporting Helga to come out and testify in really very important.
Hear, hear. Is the Executive Director of the Chinese Language and Culture Initiatives at College Board. And of course, the successful members know very well that we have a very special working relationship with College Board. We have had this relationship now for a number of years. It's a very important relationship for both parties, and I'm very pleased that Bob was willing and able to literally get off the plane last night, coming home from the Chinese Bridge delegation in China. I don't know how many hours, if any, of sleep that he got. He warned me that he might be a little bit jet-lagged around the edges this afternoon, but nonetheless, we're glad to have you with us, Bob.
Oh.
There.
Okay, good. Just wanted to be sure. Great. Thanks so much for having me on here. And yeah, as you said, I just got off the plane last night, but I'm feeling great and actually very energized from the trip, and so pleased to be able to join this meeting. And actually to hear some of the other presenters as well has been fascinating. So thank you for this. Is one that I would consider to be, part of the sort of trinity of work that we do with Hanban, College Board, and ACTFL on many of these projects, because certainly without the collaboration with this reach as we do and be able to work with as many districts and schools. So thank you all for your support and for your partnership. It's just absolutely been delightful and continues to grow. I'm going to start with our guest teacher program, which many of you are familiar with, which brings world language expertise into schools across the United States, and has actually been growing quite a bit over the years. To date, we have we've placed over 900 teachers since 2007 through the collaboration. And again, like I said before, we couldn't do this without your expertise to help us select and train these teachers, as well as to bring this regional knowledge and outreach to your regions about the work we do. This is something that we see is critical to our work, because this actually allows us to directly work with communities, schools, and teachers and students, and to help build up the Chinese language programs across the United States. We've already begun our 2015 recruitment of teachers. As Ryan mentioned, we were just in China with our Chinese Bridge delegation, and this year, as part of that work, as my team and I and the 20 other College Board staff who came with the group were out visiting 6 provinces, we were actually got the green light from Hanban to actually start doing direct reach out to the schools that we visited. Many of us visited over 20 schools while we were in China. And so while we were there, we were able to share information about the program, as well as sort of meet some teachers to make sure that the information is getting out at the school level, not just the provincial level, in case there's some interest of teachers coming. We are really trying to focus on the K-12 sector as we move forward, as we have found that K-12 teachers obviously work best in K-12 schools, and so we're trying to continue to have that message with our partner Hanban to say that those are the teachers that we're most interested, because they have the best practices for classroom management, and also and to get successful feedback. And again, we hope to bring a group of representatives from ACTFL there to help us in the selection process, because that's just so critical. For our 2015 training, our Star Talk proposal has been submitted, so fingers crossed, and we hope to expand student-teacher component and possibly separate this out into immersion teachers for more specialized training, as we see that we're recruiting more and more teachers for immersion classrooms. In addition, I actually traveled with representatives from LA Unified who work on this program, Christina Chen. She was in my group in China, and so we were able to have some really good conversations about ways to improve the actual teacher training component, because there is a component where teachers are in classes organized by LA Unified, to make it much more language instruction focused rather than culture, because they have such a limited amount of time that we want to make sure that they are actually ready to go, because after they leave UCLA, they go straight to the States and begin working in the schools. So we're working on that, and everybody's agreed that that would be a good focus, as well as trying to see if we might be able to increase the number of schools, actually break out so there's a whole elementary component and then a separate high school component. And one thing that I'm very passionate about is trying to bring those high school students onto the UCLA campus to have this experience, so that they can not only get some good language instruction, but also see themselves thriving in a higher ed environment during the summer. Another project we're working on is the State of the Field report that many of you have been just so essential in contributing to. Thank you for that, which is being organized by our dear friend Shuhan Wang, who will also be at ACTFL presenting in more detail about this program there. The purpose of this project is really to try to get a snapshot of where we are currently in the teaching Chinese language and culture in the K-12 and higher ed environment in the United States. And also to be able to make some strong recommendations about essential actions that we can take to improve this as we move forward in the next 5 years. There was a similar report done previously through College Board and Hanban, and that was very crucial to us and to help us making decisions on ways community can focus on the future and to make sure that we are evolving and developing to meet the needs of our teachers, students, and communities. And so this is also kind of interesting for us because it helps us to have a conversation with Hanban, who is a little bit less informed about the current state of Chinese education in the United States. They have a more global focus, which can sometimes dilute the focus, to be able to say, listen, this is what's really important to our communities. This is where we are. We are appreciative of where all the support you've given us, but this is the way that you can help us also to evolve in the future. So this is very exciting for us. We're expecting to see sort of the final draft report by the end of this year, and then to be able to put it out in the coming year, and hopefully we will be able to report out on this in our upcoming National Chinese Language Conference in April. As I mentioned earlier, the Chinese Bridge delegation just completed. I was there for 2 weeks with 20 College Board staff, and we had 300 U.S. delegates this year, which is slightly less than we typically had, but by design. We decided to reduce the delegation by 100 participants this year so we can be a little bit more focused. And I think that we're all very pleased that we did this because it allowed us to have slightly smaller groups and also to break those groups into smaller subgroups to visit more schools. Another change this year is that we worked very hard with Hanban to try to change the focus of our in-school visits, because sometimes they get to be a little showy when we arrive, where we see a lot of singing and dancing students, which is really delightful. But we also heard from our delegates that they would love to visit more STEM classes because so many people hear about the great strides that China has made in STEM education. Yet when we visited the schools, we wouldn't be able to see them. It was an interesting conversation that I think you'll all appreciate, in that Hanban sort of was a little bit reserved about doing this because they knew that these classes would not be taught in English. And I said, I think it's something you don't have to worry about. These are all educators, and we can definitely recognize best practices in the classroom when we see them. And from talking and listening to the delegates this year, I think everybody was very pleased that they were able to see a lot more. We are also asked to spend more time in less schools. So we broke groups into smaller groups who then visited a few schools but spent more time there, allowing them to have a little bit more in-depth opportunity to meet their colleagues, get to know them, and to build relationships. Each of our provinces we visited, which was 6, then had a administrator sort of what I call speed dating moment, where they spent a couple hours where all the principals from the province came and met our principals and superintendents, and at the end they were able to sign MOUs, which was sort of a vague, sort of we agreed to work together in the future and see what will happen MOU, but it was very effective. I know in my province, I went to Henan province, we signed about 20 MOUs while we were there, so that was about half the participants did so. So we were very pleased with that. It was a great year. I'm still kind of buzzing from this great opportunity, but I have to say it was, in our experience, it was probably the best bridge delegation we've taken. And I know that there were some really rich conversations and presentations, including for the first time we did a really in-depth look at dual language education at the end of the program. So I think that got a lot of people really inspired and excited. We had Debbie Nicholson of West Virginia attend to lead a panel discussion on program development and support too, which I understand was really well attended. I was moderating another session, so I was disappointed not to be able to go, but we're so grateful that she was able to do that. So thank you, Debbie. The 2015 National Chinese Language Conference is coming up soon. It's going to be in April in Atlanta. And NCCESFL, once again, collaborating on participating in the Program Advisory Committee, so thank you for that. We're very appreciative, and we're looking forward to ideas for collaboration, such as the meetings that we had at 2014 NCLC. And, that's becoming a more and more critical piece of our program. Right now, we're working together with Asia Society to identify plenary speakers and panelists, and we're also reviewing entries that we took in through our RFP process, and we're seeing some really exciting things. We don't know who our plenary topics are, but again, we sort of wanted to wait until the election was over to reach out to people to see who would be available. So we are trying to have a focus this year, which is basically language application post-education. So identifying people who have learned Chinese and then have taken this into a variety of careers and done interesting things with it. Atlanta is an interesting place for us to be because there's so many different businesses there and headquarters. So we're reaching out to these companies and not necessarily saying we would love to hear from your CEO, but we would rather actually sort of hear from somebody in your company who's working with Chinese language and hear their story about how they've integrated Chinese language into this professional field. So we're excited about that, and we hope that that can develop strongly. Last summer, we also offered our first AP International Leadership Program, which is interestingly the first time the College Board in our 110-year history has actually offered a student program and a travel program. And what this was is we brought 25 students to China, to Beijing, for 2 weeks to do an intensive Chinese studies program. And these students were all AP alumni, we would say, so they took the AP Chinese Language and Culture in high school, have continued on to university. They got a 3 or above on their AP test, and they have taken at least 2 semesters of Chinese after that, and then they applied to the program. I went along with the group this year along with my colleague Nachi Lai, who many of you know, and was just so impressed by their language abilities. I'm actually, frankly, a little intimidated in some cases, but that's what we hope to see. And what we do is we offer intensive immersion education courses, but at the same time, in the afternoon, we bring them to meet different leaders from different fields, sort of like the theme I mentioned for NCLC, to talk about how they are learning Chinese in a variety of fields, and also try to connect them with leaders of fields to get them thinking about how language is and will be a critical piece of leadership as we move forward and evolve internationally. We hope to see this program expand up to 100 students per year, and we will continue to share information with you. This year was a little under the radar because we basically it was a pilot program, and we found out a little bit late from Hanban that we had clearance to do so. But as we move forward, this is something that we are very proud of, and we will continue to share more information so we can help identify the best students to participate. One last piece I wanted to mention that's not College Board, but it's worth mentioning is the 100,000 Strong Foundation. I'm on the board of directors for the 100,000 Strong, and I will be joining them on Monday in Washington, D.C. for our board meeting. But some exciting pieces there is one is that we have already met our 100,000 goal in 3 years. We're very excited about that. But we also feel that there's just so much more opportunity. As you know, President Obama was just in China at the same time as our College Board program, not related, but still a fun time to be there. And some really interesting pieces have come from that, including, President Obama included the 100,000 Strong in his closing remarks with President Xi and talked about how he continues to support the teaching of Chinese language culture and wants to see more and more American students to travel to China over the years. So we are energized about that. We believe that this is a critical piece to building U.S.-China relations to get more and more of our students. And I think coupled with the great information about the new visa rules, I'm not sure how familiar you are with that, and I'm just learning about it too, but it looks like both the United States and China have really loosened up some of the visa restrictions, both for tourist and student visas. So we're going to see a lot more dialogue and exchange going back and forth. I know that yesterday China issued the first of 10-year visas for Americans, so I'm hoping that those of us who go and do the teacher recruitment can secure those soon so we don't have to keep reapplying for Chinese visas every year. It's an amazing development. So as the 100,000 Strong Foundation moves forward, if you may, I will continue to share information with the CESFL as well, because I want to make sure that everybody is aware of different scholarships that would be available through the foundation and our partners. So that's the extent of my presentation today. I'm always happy to take questions, or if anybody would like to follow up with any questions, I'd love to do so. And I know I've met many of you, and others I have not had the chance to do so, but I look forward to. And thank you so much for your time and having me here today.
All right, thank you, Bob. As I said, this partnership is very near and dear to us. We all appreciate your time and this very informative update. And as has been the case, we'll be in touch.
Great. Thanks so much.
All right, we are down to our last speakers, I should say. Last but definitely not least, another very, very valued partnership. We have with us this afternoon Marty Abbott, the Executive Director of ACTFL, and Paul Sandrock, former NCSSFL member from the state of Wisconsin and now Director of Education at ACTFL. And I believe, Marty, you're going to take the lead for the ACTFL team this afternoon, correct?
Ryan, this is Anne-Marie. I cannot unmute Marty at the moment because it looks like she's having connection difficulties with her phone to use her audio. Paul Sandrock, though, is unmuted.
All right, well, we'll just go with the flow here, and we'll turn it over to Paul. And when Marty's able to join us, then we'll definitely give her the opportunity to do so.
Absolutely. Hello, can you hear me okay? And to join in the collaboration, which is certainly our key word for our efforts. As you look at this slide, it just brings together a variety of the initiatives on which all of us are connected. And you'll see in the middle the new cover of the soon-to-be-released World Readiness Standards for Learning Languages. The standards themselves came out last year in 2013, and in this year the publication of the we often call it the generic volume, not the language-specific elements, all updated and looking refreshed, which was the key. And again, we definitely put a nod to all of our collaborating partners. These are not ACTFL standards by any means. They represent a collaboration of 16 organizations under the Standards Collaborative Board. And it really connects well. As I look at this slide and I look at your NCSSFL agenda for next week, there's a real connection here around how are we moving language performance and proficiency forward, and a lot of it has to do, of course, with the proficiency pyramid on the left, but also the centrality of the standards and how that brings us right to the language learning in any instructional setting, be it a classroom, be it virtual, be it a tutor, whatever it might be, that there is language learning guided by the standards. And in the updating, it certainly was informed by 20% the updating of the standards and the volume that talks about the implementation of that. Thank you for having Fernando Rubio as your speaker on Wednesday morning, as he will certainly be framing a lot of this conversation as well. So I don't need to do any more of that at this point. And I also wanted to touch on the earlier comments that the American Sign Language Teachers Association is a member of that Standards Collaborative Board, and there are ASL standards, so it definitely connects with your efforts around the can-do statements. And thank you for the collaboration NCSSFL around those statements, and they're being embedded in the updated standards themselves as the sample progress indicators. And I was pleased that Ruta used the very same terminology, that you're referring to the boldface statements as your progress indicators, and that same language you will see reflected in the updated volume as well. So again, an evidence of the tremendous collaboration between NCSSFL, ACTFL, and all of those involved with the standards effort. Another example, I think again representing all of what is here, is working together around the StarTalk infrastructure grant that NCSSFL began, and now ACTFL has been invited to continue that work. And again, a thank you to NCSSFL for framing that for us and giving us the understanding of what work you had already done and what would be the logical next steps. And we are working on that and really look forward to picking up where NCSSFL framed that conversation, and it definitely connects with all of the elements that you see here, that programs need to understand language learning is not just something that we can do randomly and occasionally, but it really takes some forward thinking and a lot of collaboration in their local community as well as with the organizations that can frame that conversation. As we move to the next slide, I think you will all be familiar with the Lead with Languages, and I think again our purpose this afternoon is simply to get all of us excited about the connection between the NCCESFL meeting and the ACTFL convention and Assembly of Delegates is sort of that glue point right between the two. And it's going to be a perfect way for your agenda to connect right with the rest of the convention. And Lead with Languages is certainly an element of that, with the introduction to a conversation-changing moment and that public relations campaign framing the why. And in the Assembly of Delegates, we're going to move more into the what, the who, and the how. And I think this is the key piece that we want to be alert to and be ready to jump in. And it looks like
Can you all hear me now?
Is now available.
Oh, I'm so sorry for that. I was sitting here listening to the whole conversation, and for some reason I had to dial in using a different number than I had dialed in originally. But anyway, thanks, Paul. I'll pick it up from here and just say to everyone how excited we are about the convention coming up and how much we appreciate all of the collaboration with NCCESFL and how greatly Ryan and Anne-Marie contributed to the agenda for the Assembly of Delegates. And I don't think there are many initiatives that we embark on that we don't involve NCCESFL in these days, and I think that will only get stronger next year with Jackie as president of ACTFL. So we're very excited and look forward to seeing everyone next week. The registrations are absolutely through the roof. I'm not sure if this is going to be the biggest ACTFL ever, but it certainly is going to be a very big one. So I'll pick up where Paul was leading off with the Lead with Languages. And just to let you know, we did get a matching grant from the Mellon Foundation. So we're now very actively raising funds to get enough to kick the campaign off in the first quarter of 2015, we anticipate. I did want to mention also that the National Security Education Program put out an RFP for an enrollment survey, and it was responded to by a collaboration of American Councils, ACTFL, COW, and MLA. So we will probably be in touch with you to see what data you might have from your states as we make an attempt to gather the data, and you all know how difficult that is, and so we'll see how well we can do with it this time, but I will be in touch about that. I think you can go to the next slide. And one of the main things we'll be focusing on in the morning at the Assembly of Delegates when you all are not there, I think you're aware that we have been collaborating, as you heard, with JNCL, and so what ACTFL has been working on is our state teams. And some of you are actually members of those state teams, and we appreciate that. And last year at the Delegate Assembly, they identified 10 top areas that they would like to work on, and I think you will be interested in number 3, advocate for a state supervisor for languages. And Jackie helped us put together a document that lists the steps they should take to try to get a state supervisor in their state. So in the morning at the Delegate Assembly, we'll be focusing on what their state plan is to get active. But our last alert was responded to by members in 47 states, and we had thousands of messages going to Congress. And we now have the opportunity to use the CapWiz alert method with state-wide initiatives. So if you have something going on in your state and you would like your state people to respond directly to legislators, we're able to set that up now so that you can work with state issues and not just federal or national issues. So I'm going to kick it back over to Paul, and I think he's got the last slide.
Thanks, Marty. And on that last slide, as we move ahead to it, you will see that one of the exciting initiatives funded by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation is all wrapped around languages and literacy. And again, it's a perfect connection with the messages we've been hearing throughout the afternoon. It definitely has been informed greatly by the NCCESFL conversation, and thus literacy, not just focused on Common Core, focused on whatever the state context might be. we see how, as you're looking at this, and you look at what participants will have access to, I'm not going to go through that list, but what the ask will be throughout the convention, and I hope you can discuss this at your meeting, as we will be with NADSFL as well, and at the assembly, is to help create collaborative teams. And these would be school level or multi-school level, virtual, multidisciplinary, and groups that are really coming together to see, well, what happens when we really get focused around literacy learning together. And it is really to stake a claim within the conversations happening across the country around literacy, and instead of being put in this extra room because you're not English and mathematics, to be part of that conversation. And we are doing the support through the various elements you see at the bottom there. So we think there are great benefits to participating. We also see that this may be connecting with all of your state-level conversations around student growth objectives or student learning objectives, or whatever your state may call that element of teacher effectiveness. And this is another way to really support teachers as they are trying to improve language learning and also the larger educational issue around them. And with that, I will simply end my part by saying see you in San Antonio. We so appreciate you being partner organizations. We're certainly partners in sharing our space, in sharing our efforts, and certainly in sharing our minds. So thank you.
And a heartfelt thankful on behalf of all NCLIS members, Marty and Paul, for all of the great assistance, collaboration extended by ACTFL to NCLIS that allows us to hold our meeting just prior to the ACTFL conference. We are most appreciative of the assistance that you give to us every year that allows us to come together and meet prior to the ACTFL event, and we're just so very grateful for that assistance, and even more grateful for the collaboration that seems to be growing day by day between our organizations. This partnership is one that we all value very greatly, and just can't thank you enough for joining us today and sharing all of this wonderful news with us.
Great. Thank you, Ryan. We value it too very much.
Great. All right, that concludes the presentation part of our meeting. At this point, we are running a bit behind schedule, so very quickly, Anne-Marie, if you would, I think at this point it would behoove us to perhaps unmute everyone and not force the question chat box any longer. We'll take any questions, any reactions that you have to anything that you've heard today, short conversation, and then we will finish. I've got just a few highlights of the conference that I would like to share with everyone, if you can stick around for that, and then we do need to formally adjourn through motion and vote to conclude this portion of our annual meeting. So.
Okay, Ryan, I will go ahead and unmute everyone. You will have control of your mute functions on your end, so if you want to mute yourself, you're welcome to do so by clicking on the little microphone button, but you will be unmuted, and I will start at the top of the list with Amanda. We're listed alphabetically by our first names rather than our last names, so everyone should be coming on board. There may be noisy for just a moment here as things get settled in and people realize that they are unmuted. We may also experience some feedback, so get ready for that. All right, we are all unmuted with the exception of a couple people who are joining us by phone, and their little phone symbol is not even green, meaning that the system thinks that they are not connected. This is the problem that Marty had just a few moments ago, so you may be able to redial and ask any questions you have. If not, you're welcome to put those in the question box and we'll pass them along.
So we gave you a lot of information today. We tried to pack it in. It was a very ambitious agenda today. I hope we didn't overwhelm you with too much. You can see, though, that this takes up a great amount of time during our annual meeting when we're on site, and our thought was, let's get some of this business and some of these presentations done on the front end and open up more time for conversation and interaction and learning in San Antonio on topics that are very important to all of us. So are there any questions, any reactions, comments at this time? And if you would, when you speak, just introduce yourself, give your name for the record.
And by the way, this is Anne-Marie. I am posting some messages from the question box that are coming up, so look there as well.
Yeah, yeah. Oh gosh.
Hi, this is Elizabeth Webb. Can y'all hear me?
Yes. Hi, Elizabeth.
Hey, Brian. I just want to thank you all for making this opportunity available for some of us who are not able to be at the face-to-face meeting. It was a great chance to reconnect with the important work that NCLIS is doing. And, of course, in the role I am in Gwinnett County down here in Georgia, working primarily with ESOL, but also having John Valentine, who's also an associate NCLIS member now with me. I just see so many connections between our work. So I just want to say that this is important and powerful work, and the implications and the power of this work have important ramifications and important implications, you know, far outside of the typical understanding of the world language universe. So I just want to thank you all for doing this, and thank you for making this opportunity available. It was truly a pleasure to be able to be on the webinar and listen to everybody. So thank you very much.
Good to have you back with us, Elizabeth. Other comments, any questions? Burning questions?
Brian, this is Phyllis.
Hi, Phyllis.
I'm embarrassed to say that even though I've seen repeated reminders about the update for the state reports on the website, I don't know where the original instructions are for logging into that. And
I will get those out again to the membership.
Thank you.
Writing that on my to-do list as we speak. Other questions, comments? This group is being unusually quiet today. We've either completely overwhelmed you or completely underwhelmed you. I'm not sure which. All right, since it doesn't seem that we have any questions rolling in, let's wrap this up. I'm going to just give a few highlights from our annual meeting, and then I'll ask for a motion to adjourn today. Hopefully everyone got the electronic copy of the program for this year's event, and you've had an opportunity to look through it and see what's coming up next week in San Antonio. We have worked exceptionally just very, very happy with the way things have come together. And if for some reason you did not get that electronic copy of the program, please let me know, and I can certainly resend that to you. And then, of course, we are very thankful to Stevens Learning Systems, Inc. For printing our programs for us this year. Of course, we will be providing you with a paper copy of the program when you register in San Antonio. Just want to share with you, again, we are at the Grand Hyatt San Antonio. That is located on Market Street, adjacent to the Convention Center. The Grand Hyatt has a fairly extensive Conference Center, and our NSSFL meetings will be located on the 3rd floor of the hotel in a room that's called Presidio B. And you can see the map that's up on the screen right now, and the room is circled kind of at the back end of the conference setting. And I will have for you in San Antonio, I've already printed them, copies of the floor plans for all 4 levels in the conference center at the Grand Hyatt, so we'll give that to you as well when you register, and that will help you get back and forth between floors and different venues during the 3 days that we're going to be together as NSSFL. Just some highlights of the meeting. First of all, the location. This, if you've never been to San Antonio, you're in for a treat. The Riverwalk is a truly special and very beautiful place with restaurants and night venues all along the setting of the river with the Spanish moss hanging from the trees. Very, very nice. And we are centrally located so as to be able to get to all of our different evening venues. Very easy to get back and forth between the Grand Hyatt and the Convention Center, where many of the ACTFL events will be taking place. Of course, by now you know that our theme this year centers around increasing learner proficiency. In one way or another, no matter whether you're at a state education agency, if you're working in a district, you are with one of the national language organizations, this is our shared task to increase learner proficiency in our states, in our schools, in our nation, and it was just logical to come up with this theme this year, piggybacking along with the theme of our sister organization, NADSFL, and certainly in keeping thematically with what you will be experiencing at the ACTFL Assembly of Delegates and at the ACTFL Conference. You'll be receiving about 23 hours of specialized professional development and focused networking opportunities over the course of our 2.5 days together. Of course, we start things off on Tuesday afternoon with a workshop titled Building Learner Proficiency, Implementing, Scaling, Sustaining, and Evaluating Statewide Initiatives. Very grateful to Gregory Fulkerson, Lynn, Fulton, Archer, and Anne-Marie Gunter for leading that event. And then, of course, a little bit different start to our actual NSSFL business meeting, at least the San Antonio part of it, since we were already engaged today. Since this old business will be out of the way, this year we're going to come together with NADSFL and take part in a joint Tuesday morning keynote workshop presented by Dr. Fernando Rubio of the University of Utah, one of ACTFL's up-and-coming stars, and we're very pleased to have him. I've enjoyed getting to know him these past several weeks as we've been building this keynote and workshop. It is going to be an interactive keynote, not just a sit and get kind of event. In fact, we're going to ask you to disperse yourselves in the NADSFL meeting room, which is where the keynote will take place, because there are going to be some collaborative activities built into that morning 2 hours that we'll be spending together. Of course, Wednesday at lunchtime, we'll have the big reveal of the new State Supervisor of the Year, and then, as I mentioned, a little bit different this year, we will be attending the ACTFL Assembly of Delegates Thursday afternoon, and then concluding our meeting shortly thereafter. And again, thanks to my executive board team for working together so well to put together this event, to get some great speakers and to tap the talent within our organization, to Robert and Leslie in NADSFL for securing the level of sponsorship this year and putting together some absolutely great evening events. There's a lot to look forward to at this conference. It's going to be jam-packed with opportunities to learn and share. And I'm just very, very excited to get this thing underway at long last. So, as the balloon sails off into the sunset, I'd like to thank you for attending. At this point, can I ask if there is a motion to adjourn? And if you would, you can signal your motion in the question chat box.
Helga Fasciano has made a motion to adjourn.
All right, so noted. Do we have a second?
Ruta, Couet, Phyllis Farrar, Jay Kettner, Terry Hammett, and Michelle Aoki have also added a second to adjourn.
I guess we're ready to be done. All right. In that case, if you would open the poll, we do need to take a vote to adjourn.
Please go ahead and vote. And I think we can close the poll here in a few seconds. I'm seeing all yeses in the chat box for those who are panelists and organizers. I will close, and our poll results of 93% in favor of adjourning. With 7% abstaining, there are no no's.
All right, then we are officially adjourned. I'll just add here as we all begin to say our goodbyes that we would appreciate feedback on this particular meeting and the way that we've held it. You can either send me an informal email. There will also be a question or two on the official post-conference survey asking you about the value of holding the old business portion of our meeting in this way. And then we'll take that feedback under consideration for future years. But thank you all for spending time with us this afternoon. I apologize that we went over so far. I knew the agenda was a bit much, but we needed to get through it, and thank you to all who stuck with us. I will see you next week in San Antonio. Yeehaw!